And we are live, guys. Hello, everyone, and thanks for listening in. I checked in the community what's on everyone's mind, and number one question for everyone is this the top for Bitcoin? I don't think it is personally, but you never know. We'll dive into it. Then we'll look at altcoins, because actually in the past 5 years, there has never been such a big share of altcoins in downtrend as right now. We'll look at the US policies. What does it mean for the market? We'll talk about Japan, Gamestop, Coinbase. We'll talk about if Ethereum is ever coming back, or is Solana taking over the rest, because in that case, there's still a big upside. Talk about stocks and news and a lot else. James, how are you doing this lovely morning?
Good. Busy morning, but good to be here as always.
Mando, what's up?
I'm doing good too. Yeah, surviving the great altcoin sell-off of January 2025, but still doing good.
So guys, why do you think it is that so many people feel that the top could be in for Bitcoin? I feel like I feel that you cannot look at this chart and say that this is a top. It's not. Like from a technical analysis pattern, chart analysis, this is not a top. It's a rectangle, and the trend is still up. So why is it that so many people are worried, you think? And what's your take on it, obviously? Who wants to start?
I mean, I can give my judgment. Which is, I don't know if that many people think it's a top for Bitcoin. Like, genuinely, I don't. I think this is one of the main issues that I've found, is that a lot of people, including myself, altcoins are down a lot. There's obviously a lot of pain out there. There's this big disconnect between Bitcoin and altcoins. And I think one of the main things to do when you lose money on altcoins is to basically scream bloody murder that it's a cycle top and everything's going to zero. And actually just kind of have to come to the realization that that's kind of the risk reward of some of these trades. It's the same like if you get liquidated, or it's the same if you get rugged. Suddenly it's just like, oh, everything must die because I lost money. And I see a lot of that. And I think a lot of people have been talking about it. There's this massive disconnect between retail and institutional, or retail and Bitcoin at the moment, in that this altcoin season, I mean, you can bring up Bitcoin dominance, but it's shot up again towards 62% over the weekend. A lot of the sectors which were really, really hot for months, memes, AI, they're now down about 50-60%. And even like some of the brighter spots like Hyperliquid or Radium or Jupiter, like these revenue producing protocols, even those haven't really broken out. So it's really been a Bitcoin market for a couple months now. And maybe XRP, like if you're in XRP, you've probably had a good few months, but other than that, it's been very, very tough. And that includes also Ethereum holders, which is like the second biggest asset. Like it's not good to be in that, to be so down bad over this period. So I don't see how we get a Bitcoin top here. Macro to me doesn't look so bad. I've said like we need to work out what's going to happen with inflation, and there's still like Q1's going to be a period of uncertainty, just given what's happening with Trump and tariffs and all that sort of stuff. But there's nothing that tells me we're going to fall over here or break down to something sort of horrific. It looks like we're heading out of this quantitative tightening cycle from a macro perspective. Inflation's a little bit sticky, but it does feel as though we're probably going to have some form of easing, at least globally, or maybe we open up swap lines with different countries, the US at least, as part of a trade bargaining tool. Financial conditions do not look like a situation where Bitcoin's going to fall out of bed. And you can tell that because gold continues to hit all-time highs. Gold is about to hit $3,000 here. Look at that chart. Like Bitcoin in that world it doesn't make sense for it to break down aggressively lower, which really just tells you that a lot of money has been lost in more of the altcoin market, and people are hoping that somehow they'll like this is a time for them to buy the whole market lower potentially in the future.
Oh, great analysis. Thank you for that. James, what do you see here in the market?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think people still have PTSD from the last cycle, and they are very much afraid of missing any top. Second of all, chopsolidation. When things move sideways or in a tight range, people get very frustrated because they want to get rich quick. Despite the fact we are at $97,000, it's just human nature. People want, like when I say price prediction is X, and people say, no, you're wrong, it's going to $1 million. Sometimes the expectations are a little bit off. And then when those expectations are dashed, people get emotionally crushed. And the key, and I'll say this for the 100th time, maybe the 1,000th time, is leave your emotions at the door if you're in the market. They'll wreak havoc with your brain and make you make bad decisions. But when you look at the basic data that's out there, I mean, let me run through a couple of items, just proof points. MicroStrategy, I believe, will hit 500,000 Bitcoin in 3 weeks. They have bought a truckload since the 11th of November. Absolutely crazy. They're now at 478,000, 479,000 Bitcoin. They snagged another 7,600, I think, today. When you break that down, though, there's a statistic. They have purchased, since the halving, 265,000 Bitcoin. All right. Just one firm has bought double what was mined in that same time frame. Okay. One firm. The other thing that people don't get is there's so many more coming. You know, you're going to talk about Metaplanet later and GameStop later. And, you know, you've got the states. I'm now up to, I think, 22 states in the United States that are going to allocate to Bitcoin. Some of them are huge. I think Florida was the most recent one, saying they'll invest $1.5 billion into Bitcoin. Like, I've never seen anything like this, where there's so much money chasing a finitely scarce asset. That was always the thesis since 2017, and that's what gets me excited. And if people don't open their eyes and see the big, you know, the tsunami wave that's coming, I can't help them. Now, the charts can't tell you the money that's coming. And there is, as in all markets, a level of manipulation that's out there, because that's just the way markets work. The big TradFi people that are trying to build a bag, and the sovereign out there that's trying to build a bag, they don't want the price to go up. They don't want to say, yeah, we have a reserve of Bitcoin. Everybody's trying to keep a lid on things, keep the price down. They want retail to get frustrated, sell their Bitcoin to them, and move on. And that's just how it works each and every time. So please, if you don't agree with anything I say, let me know. But that's my view of the world.
The institutional adoption of Bitcoin just continues to go crazy. And I don't know if you saw today, but Japan, for example, they've now approved Bitcoin ETFs, which is huge, absolutely huge. Japan has been this very, very weird nation where they've been very, very slow to pick up on crypto, even though they're like one of the top countries in the world for tech. They're also huge gold bulls. This is still the fourth biggest economy in the world. Aging population. They, you know, if you try and buy gold local in some of these Asian countries, you have to pay way above where it is right now. And gold is soaring. Like, this is the sort of economy that I think it just makes sense to own Bitcoin. So again, a big adoption there. And Metaplanet, which is their version of MicroStrategy, they committed to buying 21,000 Bitcoin by 2026. So like, it feels as though Bitcoin is on its own plane. You have to paint a very, very, very bearish black swan macro picture for Bitcoin to fall out of bed here, in my opinion.
Yeah, and one item as well to mention on Japan, Mando, is they are the biggest savers on the planet. They park their money in assets. They save, they don't spend. Now, when they're looking for an alternative to gold or their yen, which is melting ice cube big time, they will wake up to Bitcoin and they'll try a little bit. And they've got huge amounts. I mean, I think the third biggest retirement fund in the world is Japanese. And people just save a ton of money and they see it disappearing. So they'll go crazy for Bitcoin, just like the Chinese who lost a lot in the property market. They're looking for new alpha as well. Again, there's just so little. I'll go back to that same statistic. MicroStrategy bought twice what was mined since the halving. All right. That's not even a year.
And I'm thinking like, because we see it perhaps earlier, and then we see, okay, why isn't anything happening? Why isn't price moving? Okay, but maybe it takes much longer for those who are not sitting with this every single day like we are doing to see the same thing. At least that's been my experience in the past, that sometimes you're kind of too early and then you almost give up before it actually happens. So we had MicroStrategy, and we talked about why isn't it there 20 more MicroStrategy, 50 more MicroStrategy? Okay, but they're starting to come now, some now. And like Metaplanet, I wasn't completely aware of the numbers. So their market cap has increased 100 times in a 1 year. So, you know, if you're sitting with a company and it's gone up like 10% in 10 years, and then you see some other company, they go in there and they kind of basically copying Michael Saylor's playbook, and stock is up 2,715%, market cap is up 100 times, and
one thing I would say with these companies, though, people often focus on the market cap. They are often funded by capital increases.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
The market cap has gone up because they've also done a ton of stock issuance.
They have, but I mean, the stock price was also up like 27 times.
Up a lot,
So I don't know. I don't have the stock, unfortunately. I should have bought it, but so I haven't followed it that closely. But no doubt it's a gigantic success, and it's very visible in Japan. And yeah, I just feel there must be a lot of people sitting with companies and thinking, why are we not doing this?
Yeah, I think that's 100% the case. I think it is a little bit difficult to go from zero to MicroStrategy. Like that you can't just be like, I'm just going to be MicroStrategy, because MicroStrategy wants to be one of the biggest borrowers in the whole of the world, like one of the biggest corporate borrowers, right? It takes a long time and a lot of assets to get to that sort of level. But it would be very interesting to see if some of like the bigger tech firms with large cash balances decide to move into this, because a lot of their treasury they're not really using to a large extent. The concept that they might do something like this, that seems like one of the easiest ways to go from zero to MicroStrategy style amount of holdings.
Berkshire Hathaway is losing $40 billion a year on their $350 billion cash pile in debasement. The shareholders don't know about that yet. I mean, it's crazy. So I think we're just waiting for that big domino, a large, say, kind of Fortune 100 company or a big tech beyond Tesla to allocate to Bitcoin. Then it's game over. Then the rest will flood in. It's just, it takes a lot of courage, and then you got to get the board to approve it. And the board typically is just, you know, let's not rock the boat here. Most boards just want to maintain and not add on any more exposure or risk, especially for those companies that are kind of out of a growth cycle, like Apple, classic case in point. Tons of cash, no growth, no innovation. Not going to make it. They need to do something different. Of all of them, that would be my number one advice to Tim Cook.
So exactly. And I think one other thing to note is that there's no massive outflows from the ETFs or something like that. It's not that the institutions are sitting knowing something and they're, you know, quietly taking out all their money or something. No, there's not. So while price has really it has barely moved the past couple of days. It's sitting exactly in equilibrium, or what's the word? And I feel that something might happen pretty soon here.
And the ETFs purchased 55,000 Bitcoin since January.
Yeah, the inflows. I mean, if you look at how the market has been set up, right? So the total market cap of crypto, I think it peaked probably mid-December. I think it was around 3.6, 3.7. We're now down about 3.1. So we're down about just under 20%. So about 15%, let's say. Bitcoin in that period is also down about that much. But a lot of altcoins are down big, right? They're down 30, 40, 50 plus %. Now,
absolutely.
If this was really the top, what you would see is stablecoin TVL starting to plummet, like really starting to go down. And what we've actually seen is that people have just sold into stables. Stablecoin supply has broken out. So I think if you include non-dollar stables, nearly 240 billion now. It's just up only. Solana's stablecoin supply has gone from around 3 billion, all right, 3 billion in November to now around 12. So it's done a 4x. In that same period, the value of meme coins on Solana has dropped 50%. So what you've seen is like this big move into stables from the risky bits of the market. So I think Solana meme coins were about 25 billion in November. They're now at 11. Okay. And in that time, stable coins have gone from 3 to 12. So they flipped the meme coin market cap. So people have just, instead of just leaving, they've just moved them into stables. And so you have this now market which is set up, I think, to buy like we're not going to fall over it. We'll buy dips. I don't know if we'll buy dips in altcoins here, but it's not a market that looks like it's about to fall out of bed, at least at this stage. And why is that? I think it's what we've spoken about. Trump's meme coin kind of changed the game. What from someone who spends a lot of his time, let's say, in the trenches, the speed of tokens going up and down in the last 3 months has been something to in the last month has been something to behold since Trump. That started with coins like VVV, which is that AI coin, which went to 2.5 billion down to 100 million in like a week. Yesterday, the Central African Republic launched a meme coin, went to 900 million, and is now sitting at 100 million. Like, you wouldn't even know that. It's in a blink of an eye. It goes there in like 2 hours. And people are recognizing that people sell their existing bags to buy these new coins that get issued. We've had this since Trump. We've had, tons of different people come in to try and launch coins. And every single time a new coin comes out, existing coins dump. And that's not just meme coins on Solana. That's altcoins across the market. So people are cognizant. We're now going to be in this new world of tons of new coins. Everything's going to have a coin. Why should I own my existing coin when people are just going to dump it? And they're very, very scared of new supply. We've now gotten to the extreme of that, and like everything is down so much because people are scared of new coins. But now everything's just moved into stables. I do think that like it's not a terrible time to look at some of these coins again. Like some of the AI coins, which I think they were trading about 9-10 billion at the start of the year, right? They went up to 20, so they did 2x during January. They're now down to 7 or 7.5. Coins like ARC, AI16Z. These coins are down. They're down from where they were mid-December, right? Which is crazy moves. I just feel it is. Some of it.
Let me show you one statistic that I can guarantee you haven't seen before. So here, so these are not all the coins in the world, because there's like 60,000 new coins launched every day on pump.fun. These are the coins that are rated as active on CoinMarketCap. So it's like about 10,000 coins. So it's already filtered for the active projects. And then the yellow line here shows what percentage of those coins are in uptrend. And the blue line shows what percentage of those coins are in downtrend. And right now, out of the coins, the percentage of coins in uptrend is 6%. It has not been that low since 2019. So 6%, that means like basically you have a higher chance to find a coin, or if you buy randomly or buy on emotion or something like that, you have a higher chance to go to the roulette and bet on number 1 and 2 on the table and win. Then you have to pick one that has gone up. So I feel that I think it's exactly like you said, Mando. This is what people are feeling, that almost without exception, altcoins have dropped dramatically. They've gotten into solid downtrend. It feels terrible. And this you don't really see this in the market cap, because the biggest market cap coins have not dropped that much. And especially if looking at market cap with stables, the stable coins have actually gone up. And like the big ones, even though Ethereum feels like a train wreck, it's down a few percent. But most coins are down like 50, 60, 70, 80, 90%. And it's like 94 out of 100 coins that are in downtrend right now. So I think exactly like you said, Mando, that's the emotion, and that's why it feels like the market has gone and died, while actually we don't see that in Bitcoin at all. And I think exactly like you said, in fact, I think that a lot of the projects and the coins are actually starting to look interesting again. Like many good projects that we talked about here, for example, like I don't know, Radium or something, many coins have backed back up to support. They were like in breakout, they failed, they went down, and they come back to support. So if the market really starts rolling here, this could get very interesting again. And
Yeah.
I'm just picking one of random here.
Those are the safer bets, I think, if you're going to start buying altcoins, is the revenue producing protocols, like the ones that are hitting record revenue and buying back their tokens and have been caught in this crossfire. So like Hyperliquid would be another example, making hundreds of millions, continues to like be in a range right now, has failed to break out. Radium has kind of returned to where it was pre-Trump meme coin, despite burning close to on a run rate to burn close to 600 million of its token each year. That's under 2 billion right now as a market cap. So you have these coins which I think no one wants to own altcoin right now, and some of these stories look interesting. And then you have to go sector specific. So I think those DeFi ones I think look the most interesting. You could also look at AI coins, which I continue to think have the most upside, but there's been a lot of pain. And then similarly, people might look at some of these. I think the concept around long-term ownership of memes, pure memes, has kind of gone. Like the way that I see it breaking down right now, like if you're not, people are out of these coins in 2 hours. There's just been a fundamental shift in that bit of the market, in that we have thousands of new tokens each day, and there's so many new, I would say not legitimate projects, but like attention grabbing projects each day, that people just can't own on to something for that long. So that whole meme coin market has been very, very strange, and that the appetite for new launches is incredibly high, but the ability to hold on to a market cap for more than like 2 hours has completely gone. So like that bit of the market is not a good bit of the market just to really be focused on, unless you want to look at, people are still making millions of dollars, but they need to sell it within an hour, which is like, if you're not doing that, it's so difficult.
I think a lot of people have kind of rediscovered this, that making money is easy, but keeping it is hard during these weeks. Yeah. I would like to hand over a little bit to you, James, and we have there's a lot, it all ties together, like the macroeconomic policy, like the quantitative tightening or easing. Is it happening? What's happening with the Trump policies? Where's the market going? And so on. And can I hand over to you a little bit to share more of your insights here?
I think there's something big coming, and if you can share this particular slide here, because this ties into obviously money floats all boats. Some people believe the move in crypto market is directly tied to liquidity, quantitative easing, etc. And this is a very interesting chart from the U.S. government alone. And we know China is going to print a lot; they have to. But this shows you here the deficit that the U.S. actually has. It's about, call it a $2 trillion deficit, which means it spends more than $2 trillion more than it earns. The economy is nearly $30 trillion. The debt is nearly $36 trillion. And a lot of the reason why GDP was kept up during the last 4 years of the Biden administration was because of massive amounts of stealth spending. If you look at the amount of jobs created in the United States, pretty much all government jobs and some healthcare jobs. The rest is nothing burger completely. The problem we have now is what happens next. So there's two ways to look at this, and it's not trivial. One, we have the Doge group cutting spending, and they believe they'll easily be able to pull out $1.5 trillion, maybe $2 trillion, which could bring back a balanced budget, which we haven't seen since the 90s under the Clinton administration. So we don't know what's going to happen next. But there is something that is quite stark, and that is this slide here, which tells me QE is coming. So the US has called it 36 trillion in debt. A huge chunk of it, over a quarter of it, is rotating into very high coupon rates, which means it has to go from a financing rate of 2.5% to more than 5%. And that's going to cost a ton of money. And the other problem we have is, and Mando, I know you see this as well, nobody wants to buy treasuries. People believe, well, if the Chinese flood the market with liquidity, they'll have to buy some treasuries just to diversify their debt. But we don't know what's going to happen. But this should trigger a lot of QE. Plus, the reverse repo facility is now out of cash as well. So QE is coming in the United States, which will float all boats. All risk assets will go up. So that's the macro corner for today.
I think it's kind of known that like the globe can't deal with, or at least particularly the US as well, can't deal with high US interest rates for this long. It's been remarkable that they've stayed this long and nothing has completely broken so far. There was a really good tweet from Elon over the weekend where he actually just itemized the US deficit. And it was just very stark to see that interest payments were now at $1 trillion.
More 1.2.
Right. And a lot of people in the comments were like, that is just crazy, the move, because it showed the move from I think 2019 to now. And a lot of this is like been refied at the short end of the curve. Like they haven't done any long bonds for a long time, so they have to continually refi. They have to continually issue new bonds because that's the only place where you have low enough interest rates. They don't want to lock themselves in for 5% for like 30 years, for example. Doesn't make sense. And so there is this massive stress right now on bond markets, particularly in the short end of the curve, where they continually have to come to market with trillions of dollars of bonds that people need to come and buy. And that is causing tension. You can see it. I do think that this is now the strong dollar is a bargaining tool for the US here as well. For a lot of these sort of trade deals that Trump's going to try and do, like the strong dollar is something that they can use to be like, look, we'll do a swap line. We're going to try and bring down those rates so that your economy does slightly better. Like weaker yen, for example, weaker yuan, weaker all of these EM currencies means that they make less from all these US purchases. So they're in a very, very difficult position from a lot of their debt positions because they're often borrowed in dollars. So it's kind of a useful tool at this stage. I think that they can use for a lot of these sort of trade negotiations, and I think they're gonna try and push on it, or at least alleviate it against like Japan, for example, or maybe the EU, but particularly China. I think it's going to be used. Like, look, we'll try and weaken the dollar here for you.
Yeah, I think another positive aspect that I hadn't kind of realized, I saw this tweet from Brian Armstrong, CEO of Coinbase, that, in terms of holding assets, Coinbase is pretty big, even if it would have been a bank, like holding other people's assets. They would have been the 21st largest bank in the US. And if they were a brokerage, they would be the 8th largest brokerage. And if they were like a payment company, it doesn't even know, but it would be a lot. And so on and so forth, because they actually handled 30 trillion in stablecoin payments last year. So, I mean, it is already becoming a bigger part of the economy in the US. And then with all the positivism that's coming out of the administration right now, it just got to be positive for the market.
It's funny. It shows you how bad banks are and how bad centralized exchanges are. If Coinbase is that good, there's a lot of room for improvement everywhere. But a cool thing, again, showing the intersection between crypto and the traditional world and government and everything else. It's all interrelated, like you said, CTO. But one thing Brian Armstrong did, and what a lot of people have been calling for, which is fascinating, is moving government transparency to the blockchain. Can you imagine being able to track what different states and different federal entities are actually spending money on in an immutable way? That would really shine a torch on all the corruption that exists within government. And when we talk about government corruption in the United States, it's not just the United States. The grift is happening all over the world. You will never, ever, ever come across a poor politician, ladies and gentlemen. They're all on the take. Remember that.
Yeah, I'm as just an outside observer right now. It is an absolute cinema to watch what's going on in the US. Like, even if you just want to just tune in and like you're not making money on crypto, or it's all going sideways, just look at what's happening in the US. This is kind of incredible to see, in my opinion, to see Trump and Elon go against the deep state, to see actually where your dollars are going, follow all the different breadcrumbs. You know, they're going into the Treasury Department, they're going to clearly about to go into the Pentagon, which is going to cause some crazy moves given the amount of lost spending there. And you're going to really see where your tax dollars are being spent. I think the US, obviously, because it has like a international tentacles, let's say, goes all over the place, and no one really knows where a lot of that spending goes. But even if they start doing this in the UK, I think it's going to be amazing. And I think putting it on blockchain would be one of the most transparent ways to show a lot of this stuff. So,
oh yeah, it would be wonderful to actually bring transparency out on this on the blockchain. Incredible idea. And I want to add one other thing, that because so many of these politicians, they seem absolutely shocked in the US, like what is happening. And it's funny to watch because they have never seen like a top company culture or something like operating at that speed where, you get a lot of things done in one day, 1 week, and you go in with like a massive energy, a massive action, and you get things done. They've never seen it. They thought there would be like committees and discussions and everything, and he goes in and just like takes action immediately. It is absolutely hilarious to watch. And yeah, I think so too. Let's let's move on. Should we go into the altcoin and the momentum once again, because it hasn't resolved? Like we have talked about it many times here, but the discussion is still on the table. We have Ethereum still moving in this direction, looking like this. And one theory that has come up here is that Base, which is the layer 2 operated by Coinbase, perhaps all the fees that they are collecting in ETH, perhaps they are selling those on the market, which could explain some of this like constant downhill. Remember, layer 2 Base was supposed to be like a part of Ethereum, and then they became a competitor. Perhaps now they're even the cause for one cause for the dumping. I don't know if this is, I tried to read the thread, there is no one who's really sure, but I don't think that these layer 2s come in on Ethereum side. I think they will want to do their own token, their own network, and in the end break free from Ethereum, and especially Base, I think. So that's one side of it. On the other side, if you look for some positive, there is a lot of shorts now in Ethereum. So if some market maker wanted to come in and really make some good money and wrecked everyone when everyone feel that altcoin market is dead and everything is going to zero, that would be the time to come in and pump the shit out of this one, liquidate all those shorters, which would further fuel the market upwards, and boom, up we go. What's your take on this? So James, do you want to start?
Yeah, I mentioned this last night, actually. The fundamentals for Ethereum are just terrible right now, but the amount of shorts, this is record high level of Ethereum shorts, the biggest in history. And that's saying something. And it shows you there are people that are seeing the data at last. So let me pop this up. This is Sol versus ETH, just the actual stark contrast between the amount of activity. You can see that Solana has 1,267% more daily active users, 5,000% more transactions, 1.6 million more transactions per second, 16,000 times quicker finality. These are things that actually matter a lot. And then you look at fees, you got tiny little projects on Sol that are flipping ETH in revenue. Like Radium, you mentioned earlier, it nearly does the same revenue as Ethereum. Phantom does more. Moonshot does more. And these are tiny projects. So I think ETH is still a force to be reckoned with. It's still the 800-pound gorilla. A lot of people still hold on to the dream that, TradFi will only use ETH because it has the Lindy effect. It's been around a long time. It can be trusted. But if you want something that works globally and supports things like, I don't know, centralized exchange or a stock market, it's not going to work. Or real world assets or tokenization of the world, it's not going to work. It's simply not fast enough. It's not cheap enough. But that being said as well, the fees, the GUI on ETH, I heard, have fallen down to nothing because nobody's using the chain. So they're the lowest they've been in 4 or 5 years at 4 cents or something. But still, using that chain is painful. I have somewhere one of those wallets, the MetaMask wallet. I can't even be bothered trying to get stuff off of it. It's just excruciating.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
ETH in a strange point. I think there's a lot of focus right now on the supply aspect. Like whenever the Ethereum Foundation sells anything, there's whole threads written about it, and it's highly likely that Coinbase is selling its ETH. I think it's moved something like $150 million worth of ETH to Coinbase from its sequence of fees. I think over the last since Base was created, and it's highly likely they're selling them. At the same time, Arbitrum, I think they came out and said, look, we haven't sold any of our ETH. Like we've made a ton of it, and they're one of the biggest. They've got like 20,000 ETH they haven't sold. So it's mixed. It's very, very clear that Ethereum's problem, as we've said for a long, long time, is they've just built out a system for huge amount of block space, which doesn't necessarily benefit ETH, and then the demand is not really there. There was a fairly prominent, and I put it into our group. There's a fairly prominent VC in the space called Alliance DAO, who were part of the ETH ICO, and they said on the weekend, or they said, I think it was on a podcast last week, that it's irresponsible for them now for them to recommend for the apps that they're investing in to go onto an L2 versus Solana. They said they see it time and time again. We can maybe listen to it. It's a good piece, but time and time again that like whenever the same app launches on Solana and it launches on an L2, Solana just keeps on winning. And when you hear stuff like that, you realize to me it's more of a demand issue. It's more of a demand issue than it is the supply. Yeah, 150 million is getting sold, but Solana has pretty high inflation, and no one really mentions it. Like, sometimes people mention the Pump.Fun, they're selling Solana. No one really mentions that the Sol Foundation might be selling. They sometimes mention obviously some of the unlocks coming up, but like it's way more peripheral than it is right now in ETH. And I think it's just because people are so cognizant that the demand is dwindling there compared to this relatively small, in my opinion, like people complaining over Coinbase selling $150 million worth for an asset worth 300+ billion. It makes you think that people are just very, very acute to the change in demand here.
And Mando, on Sol inflation, it's 4.78% right now, which is lower than Cardano inflation, and you can get 8% staking yield. So just a bit, the audience is not alarmed. You can get 8% on yield, which far overcomes the actual inflation or the debasement. And Ethereum went inflationary for the first time as well the other day. Ultrasound money is no longer ultrasound money.
And I mean, the interest, if this is correct, if the analysis is correct here, that this is just the beginning, and Solana will in fact take over more and more from Ethereum, then the upside is still huge, guys. Because looking at the total TVL in like the whole network for Ethereum, it's like 56 billion. On Solana, it's 9 billion. So imagine then if all this money, one way or another, is going to float over in the Solana ecosystem. Not all will go in the Sol token, right? Not all of this is in the ETH token. It's like in stable coins, maybe on the Ethereum network. But if it moves over to this ecosystem, some of that will also then probably flow into the Sol token. So in that case, there is, enormous upside still.
Yeah.
If this transition actually happens.
Yeah, and the difference between Sol and ETH as well is, from what I understand, Ethereum that's staked is included in their TVL. But the staking ratio for Solana is much higher, but it's not included in the TVL.
It is amazing how much stables. Like, I'm not saying that ETH. I think that again, there's something to recognize here. ETH as a blockchain can continue to stay very relevant, but the ETH price, the actual ETH token, is I think what a lot of people associate with that network. Like, ETH can have actually much higher versions of stables on it than Solana, and you can make money on those stables doing various different things. But if we're talking about should you buy ETH or should you buy Solana, I think part of the issue now is that a lot of the value capture, even on the L2s, isn't flowing back to that ETH asset. So you can sit here and still be, look, I'm bullish on ETH as a blockchain. You know, that it can still be around in 10 years, and maybe you know, demand does eventually grow to fit the block space that they've kind of grown the supply of. But the actual asset of ETH is quite separate, I think, right now.
Yeah, you know, if there is any market maker that's planning to pump ETH and liquidate everyone, now would be the time to do it, because the sentiment is record bad, shorts are record high, and the narrative they would use would, of course, then be, you know, the Trump family is buying, and that would be the narrative in that case. So, I mean, it could happen. I'm definitely not shorting ETH here. That's because you never know. That could absolutely happen and come out. Should we spend a few more minutes on stocks, actually, because the stock market is doing pretty well overall, and stocks like MicroStrategy has actually backed up quite a lot from the high, much more than the Bitcoin price has backed up, because the premium has dropped. Tesla has backed up quite a bit. Nvidia is down quite a bit from the high, and so on. Are you guys looking at this at all? James, you're muted.
Tesla did bottom at 350 this morning, and it was a clear direction turnaround, which was good. And the MicroStrategy NAV premium is down at about 1.78, which is historically quite low, at least over the last 14 months or so. But
yeah,
and it was interesting. Norway, the Central Bank of Norway owns over 1% of MicroStrategy stock. So when people say central banks would never stack Bitcoin, well, that's not true. Although,
this is really the brilliance that MicroStrategy did here. Suddenly they brought something out that is completely legit.
Yeah, and the central bank can, and many, sometimes it's the only on-ramp for many institutions and individuals. Like if you're in the UK, it's tricky to buy Bitcoin, Mando, isn't it? But it's easy to buy MicroStrategy for many people.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not really in the UK anymore, but yeah, I think
in a retirement account, for example, an ISA, I think they call it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you can buy US stocks a lot easier than you can buy crypto ETFs. I think, if I'm honest, I think MicroStrategy was trading at a very high premium, and it's just produced that premium. But most of these Bitcoin treasury firms will trade at a premium, in my opinion, and that's because I think with Solana or with ETH, you might actually see higher premiums than you do with Bitcoin, because you can actually do different things with the asset a bit more. You can involve those funds into DeFi. You can earn a yield on them, that sort of stuff. Whereas Bitcoin, it's still to be seen. Like Bitcoin DeFi is still is one of these holy grails of crypto. But let's say the Bitcoin DeFi ecosystem explodes with there's various different Bitcoin DeFi protocols happening right now. Like, could MicroStrategy put to work $100 billion of Bitcoin and start earning yield on that? That would be pretty crazy, you know. Like, so I think MicroStrategy will always trade at a premium, in my opinion, because there is optionality with that high amount of treasury. And I continue to think that's maybe the most interesting thing that Saylor could do here, is that he could move towards like an equity play on that Bitcoin. which is like what Soul Strategies, for example, why that trades at such a massive premium, because people are cognizant they may do various different things. So I would never be short MicroStrategy, at least when it's at this sort of a premium. When it's at like 300, 400% premium, like a lot of people will be like, right, well, I can buy the ETF, sell this, or I could, buy the underlying Bitcoin and sell this. And unless he's going to come out with some sort of revolutionary Bitcoin bank play in the next 24 hours, like those will probably drift towards each other. But the more and more I look at MicroStrategy, that he's not getting liquidated. There's no risk of bankruptcy, in my opinion, because he's just his debt is just nowhere near the asset size right now. It'd have to absolutely get smoked for that to be a worry. In a few years' time, if he continues at the same pace, there may be a worry. But right now, he's got $100 billion of assets, and his debt is just a fraction of that. I think the best play for him would be, if I'm honest, I would stop buying so much Bitcoin and start thinking how I can really have an equity play with this Bitcoin. Like, what could I do here? And then the stock goes crazy, in my opinion.
So I've been obsessed with MicroStrategy since September 2020. There's two things that I want to share, which I've spoken of before. But first of all, they have a ton of financial jujitsu, and it's the only on-ramp for many. Now they got preferred stock available with 10% dividend. But my first theory is Saylor knows what's coming, okay? I've never seen him smile so much over the past 6 weeks as I have. He's been hanging out at Mar-a-Lago. He is chatting with the who's who of the world, including leaders of France, etc. He knows what's coming. Billionaires have a very good grapevine for information. And he's smiling, so he has to stack as much as he can because he knows the supply crunch is coming. The second theory is supply crunch. So OTC desks are down to just under 120,000 Bitcoin right now. That can be bought up real fast. If a sovereign comes in earnest, or a Fortune 100 company comes in earnest, or whatever, they'll blow through that OTC in days. I do believe MicroStrategy will have 500,000 Bitcoin in 3 weeks at this current buying rate. So they're buying all they can as quickly as they can because sovereigns are coming. Now, we also saw a precipitous fall in Bitcoin and exchanges from CryptoQuant. I don't have the chart right now, but that was the biggest tankage we've ever seen. And it doesn't mean because there's 2.4 million, it's gone from 3.5 million to 2.4 million since 2021. Not a big deal, but a lot of people do hold their Bitcoin on exchanges. It doesn't mean it's for sale. Maybe everything is for sale at the right price. But my theory, this is the wild ass theory as well. May happen, may not happen. But if a supply crunch hits and people can't buy Bitcoin from OTC or on exchanges, the only other path is MicroStrategy. Then you'll see things kick off. Again, it's 10%, 20% chance of this happening, but if it does happen, it'll be fascinating to watch. That's why I hold MicroStrategy. Supply crunch.
It's been amazing to see. I know, James, you were really the first one to talk about this that I heard, and it's been an amazing success. Guys, let's take some questions. Welcome everyone to ask questions in the chat. Yeah, imagine USA putting all the spending on chain. That would be absolutely epic.
Yes.
DCA pump. Yeah, let's. The whales are watching. Please, bring it up. One thing, 9 out of 10 solve wallets are bots. I don't think so, but I think there's a point. I think that if you're writing an AI agent right now, where are you going to put it? You're probably going to put it on Sol.
No, there was actually a cool study. I shared it in a video. I think it was Okta, and it showed the number of human users versus bots. Yes, bots exist, but humans still represent something like 96, 98% of all users on the chain. And that's easy to identify. But the problem is, even though it's like 2% bots, the bots are very active because they're algo-driven, like in all other markets. So whereas a human might do 6 transactions a day, a bot can do 100 or 1,000. Isn't that correct, Mando, CTO?
I just don't know why, even if you believe 9 out of 10 users of Solana are bots, that's bearish.
Yeah, that was what I meant. I mean, actually, the AI agents are coming, right? And why would that be a problem? I think it's a
so assuming that it's one human for every 10 bot, that means we have hundreds of millions of new users to come onto the chain, which means tens of hundreds of millions of users or billions of users, of bot style users. I think AI agents and agentic users in general are going to go absolutely stratospheric. And if you really do believe that the price is at this level with a fairly few amount of humans, then it can go way, way higher. Remember, the blockchain doesn't care if you're a bot or a human. Like, you're still paying gas fees. So the concept that you would that's going to be some huge deal, I kind of think if that is your view, you should be even more bullish.
I have another. My concern is, if I have a concern with Solana, it would be this one. And we talked about it last week. Do you guys have any other opinion? Are you worried about this at all? I mean, it's a 2 billion.
Again, it's 2.2% of the market cap. It's like literally every other chain drops that every single week. Many other chains, all the gaming money grabs, a lot of the layer 2s are unlocking like crazy right now because they see the end in sight, the end, not the good end, as Base eats their lunch. So yeah, this is again, it's been known, it's been fudded to death for the last 9 months. It's 2.2% of the actual market cap. It's not going to rattle markets. And also, it would be fascinating to see if this dovetails precisely from a timeline perspective of things like coming out of beta or Fire Dancer or an ETF. And all of these things have an impact.
We've said this every week for months. I don't think I've had a show that I haven't mentioned that Solana unlocks are coming, and there are different times to play that of its underperformance versus outperformance. Solana unlocks are coming. There is one this month. There is one next month. It's around 2% of the supply, as we've said, just every single week. Interestingly, you do have FTX, which is going to start repaying people from the 18th. That's 15 billion. Okay, that's a lot bigger inflow right there into crypto. A lot of that was Solana based or Sol linked, let's say, in terms of funds. So if you really want to talk about inflows and outflows into Solana, I would say that FTX is a much bigger thing than 2 billion of unlocks.
Yeah. Let's take the next question here. If BTC continue to go up, will the alt season be cancelled? Yeah, typically if Bitcoin goes up, there is no alt season either. I mean, now it has there hasn't been any alt season when BTC has been flat either. I think two things that are different from the last cycles is that there's dramatically more coins. There's millions of coins. There's like 50,000 new coins every day. And the second thing is that a lot of the Bitcoin money goes into ETFs and say it's MicroStrategy. It doesn't go into Coinbase, where you can go then and you click like BTC versus ETH and you sell some BTC over to ETH. No, you cannot do that if you have an ETF. It's a much longer route to move the money from BTC into altcoins. Having said that, I do think that there will continue coming back enormous opportunities in altcoins, but perhaps the cycles are shorter, they're faster, they're more dramatic, and we have to be on our toes for what the narrative is. The last narrative was the AI coins. Is that coming back for another cycle, or what will it be something else, and so on? I think that's really how this game can best be played. Do you want to add something to that?
The question on everyone's lips, right? Like what altcoin season, which periodically everyone shouts for, has not really happened. I think we've spoken a lot about the idea that it's going to be a bit more specific to sectors rather than just broad based. I think that what I said at the start of the show, like the massive increase in stables over this period, points to this not being the end of the cycle. This points to the idea that people have got a lot of dry powder again. They've just sold their holdings either into majors or into stables. So it's very, very difficult to imagine that a world where if Bitcoin keeps on going higher, people won't return to the more risky bits of the market. Generally, we started to see altcoins go absolutely insane just as Bitcoin broke out to a new all-time high. So, and my general view is that we've gone sideways here for a little bit on Bitcoin. 90 is the support. 110 is now the resistance area. If we break out above 110, I think some of these things can go crazy again.
I think so too. And here's a question: will ETH and ADA really rally to all-time high this year, or are they going to fall by the wayside? I think that an easier way to analyze any altcoin project is to not analyze it versus US dollar, and instead look at how is it doing against Bitcoin. Because if you're taking higher risk, which you are doing with any altcoin, Ethereum included, why would you hold that if it's dropping versus Bitcoin? It's better than and lower risk to hold Bitcoin. So also the charts are often cleaner. So I think it's better to forget about that question and look at how they are doing versus Bitcoin instead, to kind of take it in a two-step.
Yeah, and the other thing is, well, when you look at Cardano, there's simply no adoption. The value of market cap per user is nearly $1.2 million versus a couple of $1,000s with Solana. It is outrageously overvalued, just like Polkadot, just like XRP, just like Stacks. And even ETH, they're the most expensive chains, whether you're looking at daily active user basis, daily transaction basis, any metric you look at, it is insane. But don't be tricked by staking your asset and being locked in. Have the courage sometimes to sell something. There's no point in being married to a dead asset. No offense to the Cardano army out there. It's just
exactly.
math.
Should we take a guess? When would be, if this one is going to break out, like Mando said, if we break through the ceiling here and go further, what would be the environment to create that event? When would it be, or what would be the indicators we should be looking for?
Global liquidity increasing, US QE, and supply crunch. That's it. Maybe a Fortune 100 stacking. Any of those four things will send us to the moon.
Yeah, I would point to like single events that often cause this to happen. So I would point to maybe one of the big tech stocks buying multiple of these states. We have 22 states, US states, all with a lot in their treasury now, looking to potentially have Bitcoin treasury. If you saw a very big one like Florida or Texas move to this, I think that could push us. Similarly, if you saw a big nation state do this, and then obviously we have the US already considering this, but that seems like it may be like a month's thing, like that might come in Q2. So we may chop until then. We honestly may, but sometimes you need like this one big event that like smashes us through that level, just like we had with the election. Like that was the final thing that got us to the other side. Sometimes it's like one single thing that happens, like the ETF happens or the election, and it may need something like that this time. In terms of altcoins, like Solana ETF being approved, I think could be a pretty big one for that one to go quite a bit higher, and potentially like you could get XRP, Doge, Litecoin. All of these are in a hot race to have ETFs, so you could have those ecosystems all rally as well.
Yeah, and I think that because if someone is trying to hold down the Solana price, which I think is at least possible, then the narrative to do it with is the unlocks, which has picked up a lot. And then if we just get through that period and actually nothing happens, okay, that could be the catalyst. At least that's something I'm watching. Should we take 1-2 more questions and then actually wrap it at 1 hour today?
Yes.
Let's see, what else do we have? BTC supply crunch, gonna catch a lot of people. Flat-footed. Should I wait to buy Sol after the unlocks? Yeah, impossible to know. I mean, one thing with the breakouts is that it's not that you're gonna miss it. It's not that Bitcoin will break out here and you didn't notice. That risk is pretty low. So I think that the bigger risk is often to get like paralyzed. You feel that you missed the perfect entry for some reason, and then you don't take any action at all, and then you miss the rest of the move as well.
Well, I think went on, was it CNBC or Bloomberg, and said he thinks they could get a Solana ETF in the next month. So if you're waiting for the end of the unlock, you could have a headline out in the next month that Solana is about to get an ETF, and that I think is a huge headline. So it's difficult. Like the final unlock is next month. A lot of people are looking at this, as we've said, but you never know the news cycle in that 1 month.
Yeah. I forgot to say in the beginning that Marty is traveling today. He will be back next Monday. There's a lot of questions about the Zeus, which has also backed up a lot, but I think we can take that next week. It's another one that is, felt like maybe missed it, and then it actually backed up to support. And
I continue. One thing I would say I continue to have is like my exposure for majors is JLP, and which I've mentioned just so many times on this show, which is the Jupiter LP used for their PERP protocol, which is essentially a basket of Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, mainly Solana, and stables, and that earns between 30 to 70% APY at the moment. If you bring up the JLP chart,
what's the risk with that one?
The JLP chart, the risk. Well, it's a DeFi coin, so like potentially you're at risk that their wallets would somehow get hacked in some way, or it obviously it makes money from traders losing money on fees or being liquidated on their PERP protocol. So if one trader on their PERP protocol was to make insane amounts of money, that you've seen that sometimes damage ones in the past, like GMX went down slightly, but that I think that moved at like 1% in the past. Like it's not like it doesn't move 20 or 30%. The main risk here would be somehow that Jupiter got hacked in some way, and that these funds on Jupiter got but like compare that to Bitcoin, Solana, and ETH. Like that chart is just like a crazy chart to own.
Oh, it's crazy. It's like one of the best charts ever. It's just a straight line up on the log chart and not not even flinching.
So your trade there is really, you think people are going to be trading more perps on Solana, which has been a pretty good bet for the last year, and that secondly, that like so the fees of that protocol will continue to go higher, and then you have like a more decentralized bet on or less specific bet on which of the majors will go higher. So you have a little bit of Solana exposure, a little bit of ETH, a little bit of Bitcoin, and then it stables. But the main risk is that you're taking some form of DeFi risk, but it's been going on for a long time. Jupiter is easily the biggest DeFi protocol on Solana, so it's a fairly well-known project.
Yeah, amazing.
A very quick chart that's worth sharing here is slide 4. Is the new whale world, just so people realize what's happening, because a lot of people just look at price and they say, "Oh, it's going nowhere. It's boring." This should be a wake-up call. These are new whales. These are people with kind of over 10,000 Bitcoin, and how much they are stacking. Purple, new whales. It means less than 155 days of ownership, and it's gone to the roof. We've never seen such a spike in new whales. So there are sovereigns stacking somewhere. There are treasuries stacking somewhere. There are high net worth billionaires stacking somewhere. We just don't know who they are. And they don't want to disclose who they are because they don't want to drive the price up while they continue to stack. That's the most important chart you'll probably see today. If you're retail and you're frustrated, look at this. It'll give you some comfort.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Absolutely. Great. Any final thoughts or comments before we wrap it?
I just replicate what I said last week. Like these chops can go on for a while. It feels as though the vibes are slightly more relaxed or down. These chops, it lasted for 270 days last year. My guess is it will be a shorter one this time. I don't know how long you would say that started, but maybe it started in late November, early December. So far, this kind of chop period, this could last until Q2. So I just wouldn't throw in the towel because maybe you've lost money on altcoins, or maybe consider going back into like a more defensive play during this chop period. It does feel as though altcoin season would generally happen when Bitcoin kind of breaks out to another all-time high, and I can't really guarantee when that's going to happen. But it does feel as though now that they're down so often, and there's some really good stories there, the risk reward on some of these look very good to me.
And by the way, historically as well, in terms of Bitcoin monthly returns, Feb through May are some of the best months ever. They're normally all positive at this stage of the cycle, and the returns are normally north of 15% per month. The question is, when we look back to the pre-halving run and everything else, things happened a little bit earlier than normal. That was all driven by the ETF. But I think everything else is kind of happening like clockwork. September, October, Moonvember were all bingo, just like traditional cycles. So if those continue to follow, the next 3 months should be very good. 4 months, in fact, out to May.
Yeah.
We'll see.
All right. Thanks a lot for great insights, as always. Mondays are the best. And yeah, until next Monday.
Yeah,
So
hopefully a big news release as well. Thank you, CJ. Great job. And Mando, good to see you. Have a good
Thank
day.
you, everyone, for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to James and Mando on all the platforms. The links are in the description. And stay safe in the markets. Don't get liquidated, because this isn't over. So see you next Monday.
Thank you.